Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As you come in, we're going to open up the chat. If you are so inclined, we would love to hear where you're joining us from. So you could put in the chat where you're coming from. We'd love to see where everyone is coming from. Hi, everyone. If you've just joined, you can enter where you're coming from in the chat. We'd love to see where everybody's coming from. And we'll get started in just a minute. Cool. Somebody from North Carolina. Ooh, New Zealand. Love that. Portland, Tennessee. Amazing. If you're joining us now and haven't heard, we'd love for you to put where you're joining us from in the chat. Pamplona, Spain. Cool. Virginia, Missouri. This is great. We'll get started in just 1 minute. We're going to give everybody another minute to join us. We have a lot of folks still shuffling in. If you've just joined us, and we would love for you to put where you're coming from in the chat so we can give you a little shout out and say hello. There's somebody from South Korea. Great. Denmark. Oh, cool. Wales. Another person from New Zealand. Great. All right. We'll give it 1 more minute for folks to keep joining, and then we'll get it started in a minute. If you haven't gotten a chance yet to put where you're joining us from in the chat, go ahead and put it in the chat so we can give you a little shout out. Seems like we've got such a great international crowd today. All right. I will turn it over to Cynthia to get it started.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our ISEP Student Experience panel. Today you'll be hearing from previous ISEP students who have studied abroad, and they'll be sharing their experiences. But before we get into that, we just want to share a few things about ISEP and our application deadline. So at ISEP, we are a non-profit organization. Our goal is to make study abroad accessible and affordable for everyone, regardless of where you come from and where you live. Our ISEP programs are immersive and authentic, and we really focus on the intercultural exchange aspect and engagement within the host community where you're studying. I'll explain a bit about ISEP Exchange and Direct. So with ISEP, we offer semester-long, full year, and summer programs. Within our network, we have over 300 universities in over 50 countries. So there are 2 ways to study abroad through ISEP. One is ISEP Direct. So on ISEP Direct, you're paying a specific program fee. There are flexible housing and meal options for these programs. Your placement is guaranteed as long as you meet the academic requirements. I would check with your home university to see if you're eligible for ISEP Direct. ISEP Exchange is our other form of studying abroad. On exchange, you're paying your home university's tuition, housing, and meals in exchange for a placement at a host university receiving those benefits. So on your ISEP application with exchange, you'll rank up to 10 sites. Your placement is dependent on popularity of the program and the space available for incoming students. When creating your ISEP list, we recommend adding at least 3 to 5 programs and 2 or one of those programs having a good or excellent chance of placement. So if you haven't created an account already, you can do so on our website. Just go to isupstudyabroad.org/apply. You'll be prompted to put in your personal information, information about your home university, and then once you have an account, you'll be able to see who your ISUP Student Services Officer is. And so they're the main point of contact at ISUP for any application questions or questions about our programs. And now I'll turn it over to Jackie Langdon, who will be moderating our panel today.
Thank you, Cynthia. Like she said, my name's Jackie Langdon. I'm part of the marketing team here at ISUP, and I'm really looking forward to moderating today's panel with our wonderful student alumni. So we'll go ahead and introduce everybody really quickly and then go through a series of questions that we have. Like Rachel has said, feel free to type any questions that you have in addition to what we're asking into the chat, and we'll make sure to take the time to answer those as well. So today I am joined by three panelists. So we have Kelsey, who is from the US, Kent State University, and studied abroad this past summer in France. We have Leah Williams, who's from Howard University in the US and spent last spring semester studying abroad in Ghana. And then we have Catherine, who is also from the US, East Carolina University, who spent, I believe, a semester abroad in South Korea. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing about each of your experiences today. So we'll go ahead and start off with hearing, how did each of you make the decision to study abroad? I know that everybody kind of approaches that differently, so I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Maybe we can go ahead and start with Leah.
Hi. When it came to my decision to study abroad, I already knew that I wanted to go abroad before I even got into college. I've traveled like my whole life. So I knew it was important for me to have an international experience, but deciding where was the issue. So I kind of just went backwards. I started off with my coursework and what courses I needed to take in order to graduate on time. And then I had to see what universities on ISEP's list offered some of those courses. Obviously, you can't see all of the courses prematurely, but I knew that the universities that I wanted to choose had to align with my minor, which was sociology. I also knew that I either wanted to go to South America or Africa because these were two continents that I felt uniquely connected to. So after like going from what courses do I need, how much is the program, which countries align with my personal values and the experience I want to get, going from that and then coming with a list of like 3 countries that fit all of those requirements and then choosing from that. That's how I chose Ghana.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Catherine, do you want to tell us how you made the decision to study abroad?
Yeah, so I kind of had the same path in life. I've always loved traveling. My dad is from Denmark, so I've actually been there like 3 or 4 times. And then in high school, I had the opportunity to go to the United Kingdom. So I kind of explored Europe a lot, and I wanted to try and go somewhere outside my comfort zone. So I wanted to go somewhere in Asia, and I was looking in Thailand, Taiwan, Korea, lots of different places. And then I ended up choosing South Korea just because I loved the big city vibes of Seoul, but also it being surrounded by a ton of nature and different things to do. And every day I felt like there was something new I could try. So I kind of landed on South Korea just because it had that big city vibe.
Great, thank you so much. And Kelsey, do you want to tell us how you chose to study abroad in France?
Yeah, so I started taking French language courses in middle school. And since then, I have been enrolled in a French course all throughout high school. I just now started my junior year of college, where I have an international business minor. So a requirement of that is to study abroad for at least 2 weeks. And doing that, having that French background for a majority of my life, I always knew I wanted to live or study in France. And I think that this summer program was the perfect opportunity to get a little taste of that, what it would be like to live in another country. And in the future, career wise, if I'd like to work over there, the cultural difference, all of that. So I kind of always just had that desire and want to travel. And ISEP just provided a really, kind of easy and comforting way to do that. So that is why I chose.
Awesome. So I think everybody touched on this next question just a little bit in their answers already, but I'll open it back up just to see if there's anything that our students want to expand upon. So how did you make the decision to select the program or programs, if you were applying to multiple, that you were interested in studying abroad at through your ISEP application? Does anybody have anything they want to add that they haven't said already?
Yeah, for me, I knew that through ISEP, what fit with my schedule. There were two different programs, and the program I selected really had an emphasis on both education inside and outside of the classroom. There were lots of faculty-led trips. There was time allotted off to travel and, just really embrace yourself in Europe and France and be able to have those experiences. And for me, I learned, I think, equally as much outside the classroom as I did in. And I just knew I wanted something that was, kind of had that emphasis on travel as well as education.
Thank you, Kelsey. Do Catherine or Leah have anything to add?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to go to South Korea, but there was the difference between the IS exchange and then the direct, and I had a hard time struggling with which one I wanted to choose. But when it really came down to it, my school is a bit smaller, and I knew my chances were more sure if I did direct. So that's kind of how I figured out which program I wanted to do. Direct just gave you that for sure chance that you were able to go to what country and what university you wanted to.
And for my case, I chose my specific ISEP program at University of Ghana because of similar to what Kelsey was saying. There were opportunities to travel outside of the classroom, and then with my specific ISEP program, there was like volunteer community service, a community service aspect to it, and so that gave me the room in my schedule, and that put me in the mindset that like when I go to this country, I'm not only going to be learning from the university, but I'll also be collaborating with the individuals in the country and traveling throughout the country. And that was like a big reason why I chose my specific program.
Thank you, everybody. Everybody has some great answers. I mean, it's really important for everybody considering studying abroad to think about, okay, what is my unique set of personal, academic, cultural, professional criteria that I'm aiming to achieve through this type of immersion experience, both inside and outside of the classroom. So it's so wonderful to hear how each of you came to making that decision. Going off of, significant kind of points during the study abroad experience, I would love to hear an anecdote or a story from each of you highlighting a pivotal moment in your study abroad experience. So I can go ahead and call on somebody, or if somebody wants to unmute themselves first, that is fine too.
I can go. I think I actually went to Korea a week before I had to for my program, and I went with my mom and my other friend who was from my same university and studying abroad at Yonsei with me. And I think just the second we got there, it just like everything kind of hit because I'm definitely a type A person and I plan a lot ahead, and I like had done so much research, but then getting there and actually seeing like, oh, I have to implement these changes. And it was really hard with my mom and my friend being there because they hadn't done as much research or had like figured out kind of the way things work there. So like the public transportation was a big difference where I'm from because everyone just kind of drives around. So it was definitely new to be able to have that opportunity to try public transportation, and trying to figure out directions and stuff was definitely really challenging. And I kind of felt like it was all on me to do it, and I was guiding my mom and my friend. But after like a week or two, I had it down and I like didn't even have to use my phone anymore at some point. It was so rewarding to just be able to feel very accomplished of myself that I was able to do it. So that was definitely the most pivotal point for me in the beginning.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Catherine. Okay, Kelsey or Leah?
Yeah, mine, I'd say is pretty similar. It was actually the end of my program. We all went out to dinner. I had a great group of people that I was with in France, and just sitting there, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like everything I was stressed and worried about, and what if this happens and what if that happens? I did it. And we kind of just were like, we built this little life for ourselves in this, place that people really don't know about. And looking at all the places I had traveled to and the memories I had made, and, you know, the education I was, you know, studying at a university in a second language that I'm the only person in my family who speaks French. So it was just a very rewarding moment to look back and think, wow, like I did this. You know, you did it on your own. And it was just a very cool thing to realize that you can do it. And it might be scary, but it will definitely be worth it.
Um, so for me, I just feel like my entire experience in Ghana was very transformational. From the day I got there until the day I left, I learned so much about myself and specifically about African American history before African Americans were even a thing. But I would say the most pivotal moment was like in the photo that you used to introduce me. I had hiked Vlee Waterfall, which is the highest waterfall in West Africa. And I just remember like being at that point, and that wasn't even the peak, but at that specific point, just looking into the distance of Ghana and like thinking the same thing that like Kelsey was thinking and Catherine were thinking, like, wow, like I'm the one who brought myself into this moment. Like it was me who had this dream, who had this vision to like be in this country, and like everything I thought of everything that could have gone wrong. I was like, I was just like acting as like a pillar and as like a beacon for everyone who had ever like wanted or thought of like or dreamt of going to Africa, going to Ghana, while simultaneously like living this like life and reality that was like outside of everything I'd ever known. Like it was just the best moment ever. I was like, wow, I did it. And I had malaria in that photo. So I was like, I survived a lot and I'm super proud. So yeah, it was that hike that made me realize the culmination of everything that it took to get there.
Oh, that's so lovely. It's so all of your excitement is so contagious through the screen. And what I'm hearing on my end is that we had some students mention that their pivotal moment was at the beginning, some at the end, and some like throughout the entire experience. So it's so cool just to have these moments where you realize like the moments of self-growth or how amazing the thing you're actually doing is throughout your time studying abroad. So I love hearing about those pivotal moments from each of you. So kind of going to the day-to-day of study abroad, I'd love to hear about how did you connect and make friends with local students during your study abroad experience? So we can start off with Catherine. We can go in that order.
Yeah, so there's definitely tons of on-campus clubs you can join that promote like making friends with just anybody who's there. I stayed in a dorm that was on campus and it was all international students. So just being in that space with everyone else who was surrounded in the same kind of situation you were was just so amazing. And the friends I made there, I actually made before even arriving there because we had a situation with housing and everybody was on Twitter complaining about it. So we all made a group chat from that Twitter conversation. And then when we got there, we all got to meet each other and we went to like the Han River and everybody brought snacks from wherever they were from. So it was great to just have that experience with everyone else who was from somewhere else and like just came to someplace new. And it really was not as hard as I thought it was going to be. Making friends, I thought it was going to be really hard because you're in this new country by yourself. But everyone else who was in the international housing was also in a new country by themselves. So everyone kind of has that same vibe going on of they just want to make friends and just want to explore wherever they are. So definitely just going out there and putting yourself out there is definitely what I recommend. There were so many group chats for so many different things. There was like a hiking group chat you can join or a karaoke one. So just putting yourself out there and then just making friends. It's really much easier than I thought it was going to be.
Good. Well, we're happy to hear that. Yeah, when I talk to students, I frequently hear that, oh, people were so receptive in my host culture about like wanting to make me feel like at home and wanting to include me. And so it's nice getting to hear stories that kind of coincide with that too. So why don't we hop on over to Kelsey?
So for my term, I was there in the summer, so there aren't as many, you know, students who live in France who were there at that time. It was more so just international students and ISEP students. So my housing, I was with people who were all ISEP students who came, and a couple other international students that were studying abroad, just, you know, through their university in another country to here. And I think just at first I was like, I want to travel, I want to experience these things. And oh my gosh, what if I have to do it by myself? Because people don't want to. And I think getting there, I realized that everyone is there for the same reason. We're all there to experience new things and see new places. And it was just a really fun experience to be in that same boat and have all of those people with you. And not that they're kind of built-in friends, but at least knowing that you're in an ISEP program, there is more than likely going to be other ISEP students. So it was just really comforting to have that group of people there. And so I think the stress of initial, oh my gosh, there's going to be nobody, definitely went away as soon as I saw all the other international students in my housing.
Yes, whether, you're making friends with other international students or local students, study abroad, such a wonderful time to be connected with people from all over the world who you probably wouldn't have met in other circumstances. So I'm glad that you were able to make friends over the summer as well. Leah, I'd love to hear about your perspective.
Yeah, I would say that I had a mixture of international friends, like friends I met in the international hostel, which is where I stayed for the semester, and from my ISEP group, in combination with local friends. Ghanaians are very friendly. And so they were very intrigued by me because of my accent. So it was very easy to make friends. And then I also joined the volleyball team. I participated in the International Welcome Durbar, which was like um, a, a celebration that University of Ghana International Students Office like held for all of the international students, and they invited the entire campus. So I participated in that. And then also, I participated in class lectures. So we had lecture halls of like 300 students, and you could go up and you could like present, or you could like speak about how you felt, because I was in sociology and we had to do like in class research and stuff. So through that experience as well, many students would come up to me after class. We'd get lunch together, dinner together, and I even had a group of friends who like were so fond of me that they invited me to their home for the weekend, and like I got to have that host family experience as well. So just put yourself out there, have fun. People who are interested in you will gravitate towards you, and you'll be able to have all the experiences you want to have.
Thank you for sharing that. And kind of going off of that same like tone of like interacting with host culture, I would love to hear from each of you a favorite experience of interacting with your local host culture. ISEP is all about immersive, authentic experiences abroad, and we'd love to hear some of the highlights from each of your times with your host community.
Yeah, I would say my most memorable experience was definitely when me and a group of friends went to Jeju Island. It was like it's a little island down at the bottom of Korea, and compared to Seoul, there weren't as many like tourists there or people that spoke English, so it definitely felt more like we were in an environment where we had to really be outside of our comfort zones and really explore the host community. But it was so beautiful there and surrounded with like natural beauty. There was like a lake we could go to and a market. So it just felt like everywhere we were going, we were exploring new things. And the people were so friendly and like encouraging us to try new things. We went to this one place for dinner and they were like, oh, try this, try this. Like, I'm sure you're going to like it. So just encouraging us to try the things that are native there. And it was just so amazing. So definitely my time in Jeju was one of my most memorable moments.
So for me, I kind of have two that stand out. One was there's a lot of local restaurants for like the Savoyard cuisine in that area of France. And the French are very proud of, their food and their culture. And those are kind of, one and another. And we went out, just a big group of people who were in the program, and we went to this local restaurant. And obviously, it's not very predominant where you find English speakers, and it was all in French, and we had, the greatest waitresses, and they would all give us recommendations for everything and, tell you about the history of the food, and oh, this cheese is from this mountain and they know this person. And, it was all very much, it was, there's a community there, and it's not just going to a restaurant and eating a meal and leaving. It's, the culture of sharing a meal with people and getting to know, the history of that area. And that was just a very cool experience to have such a local restaurant serving things that are, so unique just to that little part of France. And then also celebrating Bastille Day, which is France's Independence Day, as an activity that wasn't so much, people in America go to Paris for vacation. We were doing this thing that was such a French thing, and getting to celebrate Independence Day of another country and being there and, seeing people just picnic and being with their families. And it was just a very cool kind of big or global experience.
Um, I would say for me, the my favorite experience of connecting with a local community would have to be with my two closest friends that I met in Ghana. They're Ghanaian and they're twins. And one day they invited me to their dorm after class and they were like, we want to teach you how to cook some of our food. And so that one invitation became like a weekly occurrence where I learned how to make every single traditional Ghanaian dish and like share the food with all of their roommates. There would be 6 of us eating out of one bowl, eating the meal that we just spent like 3 hours to prepare. They're all speaking like the native language, which is Twi. I'm trying to learn and understand, but like we're just all vibing and laughing and having a good time. So that was like one of my favorite experiences.
Okay, well, at the risk of making myself more hungry, everybody mentioned food in their answers. So I would love to hear if anybody who's on the chat today is considering studying abroad or visiting one of the locations where you studied, what is like the bucket list? You have to try this dish in your host country that each of you have.
I feel like I have to say Korean barbecue just because like we have Korean barbecue in the United States and it's amazing, but over there it just tasted like so incredible, and my friends would make it like a weekly thing. So like every Friday night we would go and get Korean barbecue at the same place, and it was so good, and they give you such big portions too. So every night I felt like I was just eating such good food and enjoying it so much. I'd also have to say jajangmyeon though. It's really good, and I hadn't had it before, so when I went to Korea, it was my first time having it, and I loved it. And when I came back here, I had it at a local Korean restaurant, and it didn't feel the same. So now I like am longing to go back and just try it again.
For me, it's kind of stereotypical, but the bread, the pastries, the cheese, and the wine. And I think, the cheese and the wine, it's kind of a pairing together because every little region we would go to or visit, we'd always try the local cheese or the wine that was there. And in my region, there was Tom de Savoie, which is the local cheese, and Altesse, which is a local wine. So those were just very cool to, you travel to the next city over and they have their own specific wine and specific cheese. So seeing that was just so cool to me because everyone has their own unique culture. And it's just all so, so good. And also we had every corner has a bakery. So every morning we would all walk to a bakery and get a pain au chocolat or a little pastry, or grab a loaf of bread. And it was just a fun thing that we did every morning. And it's, always so good every time. And I agree with Catherine. I wish I could go and walk around the corner and get, a nice warm pain au chocolat, but the Trader Joe's ones that you put in the oven will just have to do for now. So I agree.
I feel like I have like similar experiences to both of you guys. Like there was this breakfast pastry that we would eat every day called bow fruit, and it's just like fried dough with I don't even know what they put on it, but every morning before like lectures, we would always get that. But I feel like when you go to Ghana, like you can't escape jollof rice and you can't escape light soup and fufu. You're gonna like interact with it and eventually you're gonna try it and you're gonna become addicted and that's all you're gonna want to eat. So yeah, that's what I would say. All the soups are phenomenal.
Yes, and one of my personal travel recommendations, like traveling, studying abroad, like anything I always like to do when I visit somewhere new, is I always try to take like a local cooking class, and that may even be like an excursion or an activity that you can sign up for depending on where you go. Because one, it's amazing to learn from locals, the different specialties, and then also you get to learn how to cook it and bring it back with you so that then, there's maybe a elevated version of what's available at Trader Joe's, not that that those aren't amazing, but okay, amazing. Well, I think we may have a chat question.
Yeah, we have a question from the chat. So anybody can jump in when you're ready to answer it. First one is, were there any group activities or travel that you went on with your group? And the second question is, did you know anybody before you went on the trip? Did you know anybody else who was going on your program, or did you go solo?
So my program had a lot of kind of day excursions. We went to Geneva, Switzerland. We went to Chamonix, France, which is very famous for skiing. We went to a lot of local areas that I would have never known about if I wasn't a part of that program. I'd say once a week there was always something going on, and that was included in the cost with ISEP. And then also it was just a funny experience because I got to France, I got to the housing, and I was talking to this student, and she was like, yeah, I'm from Kent State University. And I had no idea, I didn't know her and she didn't know me, and we had no idea we were going. And we just got there, and we both know each other now, but I did not know anyone prior, even though there was someone from my university.
That same
Awesome.
exact thing happened to me, Kelsey. So I went to Ghana alone. And when I got there, and in my ISEP program, we were introducing our names, our universities, and she was like, "Oh, I go to Howard University," and I was like, "Stop, me too! Like, I've never seen you." So that was really cool. And then, in terms of traveling, yeah, I had some excursions that were included with my ISEP cost. We went to Cape Coast, which is famous for like the castles where enslaved people were taken from Ghana to the Americas. But we also, on my own dime, which was very affordable because of the conversion rate, I traveled all around Ghana, and I also got to go to Togo and Benin. So I traveled with people that I met within the international student group, not ISEP, but like a part of the international students who all came to Ghana for that semester. So you'll find people who want to travel, who want to explore, and y'all will make a way to see the country.
Definitely. I think we find that a lot of you're gonna, especially on a semester abroad, you're gonna find somebody else. If you want to travel and explore, somebody else will be there who also wants to explore. Catherine, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I actually did have one friend from my home university who was going to the same university and stuff. She was the friend I mentioned before who came a week before. And I will say it was really nice to have that one person who you knew already, so you could kind of have someone just off the first couple of days in case you didn't know any else, you could talk to them. But I did make a ton of other friends just through like classes and stuff. And one of my favorite little things is I actually did a group thing in one of the classes I took an understanding K-pop class, and our midterm was actually to make our own K-pop music video. So it was really fun. And the group I did it with, we all just kind of went on little excursions. So we went to like photo booths, to like a karaoke place, to like an arcade. So just going with that little group to different little things in Korea. So even though it wasn't a super big travel, it was still really memorable and fun to go to all these little things that make Korea special.
Yes, I love that. That's great. Okay, we've got a lot of questions in the chat now, so I'm going to try to get to as many as we can. How were the academic expectations at your host university similar or different from your home university? Or was there a difference in the academics? And if so, how was it similar or different?
So for me, in my experience, I knew beforehand I was a little stressed because culturally the French have a strong emphasis on education. And, I was like, I'm going to get there and it's going to be this very strict kind of program. And I arrived and, there is that academic rigor that they have. They expect you to do well and put the effort in. But there's also that French sense of, it's also, we're here for an experience and, there's no need to stress. It was a very comforting environment. I had really amazing professors who made it known that, yes, we are here to learn. But it's also not something that you need to stress out about. And it's more so just getting a good experience, less than, oh, here's this due and this due. It was a very relaxing transition. I was afraid at first that it was going to be very overwhelming. But I think, the French have that strong work to life balance. And it's the same with education as well, at least for my experience. So it was a very nice balance. And I still felt like I got a very good education there and my French improved a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have to agree with Kelsey. I would say education is really important in Korea, and the way classes were held were pretty different from what I was used to. So there was less like homework every single day, and more your grades were focused on like exams and your participation in class. I was used to like if you come to class, you come to class. Meanwhile, in Korea, it was very much like we check attendance and we expect you to be in class because you paid for this and you should be attending class. So I really enjoyed that because it made me more encouraged to go to class and show up. And I really loved all my classes, though the teachers were so accommodating and they would be more than happy to spend any time with you going over any questions you didn't understand. And especially, I took a Korean class there, and my professor was fantastic in the way she taught us. And I feel like I also improved on my Korean a lot, just like Kelsey and her French.
Great. Another question on academics for all of you. Did anybody decide to study something different than your major at your home university, or did you all study your same major that you have at your home university?
So I am a public relations major, but I decided to take on sociology when I studied abroad and use that as my minor when I got back. And it was completely different. PR is professional based and sociology is research based. And even though I did research in the past, I definitely had a lot to catch up on. But because of the culture in Ghana, everything moves at its pace. Everything moves at a very moderate pace, and like everyone is very patient with you when you're learning. So it was easy to catch up and to participate in class, even though I kind of didn't have that much of a background.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a French and marketing major, and I have minors in data analysis and international business. So in France, I was just doing French language and cultural courses. I wasn't doing anything business related. So I was studying yes and no at the same time. But I'm also able to use my higher level of French to help improve me in the business sense. So it was a fun break from taking business type courses and more so focusing on the cultural elements of the language, which is something that you don't get as much in the United States.
Great. All right. Our next question, very related to what you just said. So I know each of you has spoken a little bit about your experience with local language and language learning. Did you struggle with the language barrier? Did you feel prepared? Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience with language learning abroad?
I could say I definitely wasn't fluent or conversational at Korean at all when I went. I knew the common phrases and like the things that would help you get around. But I took my Korean class, my Korean language class while I was over there, and I feel like learning the language while I was being surrounded by the language, constantly hearing it and having to practice it was so much more helpful than just trying to study it at home and not being able to hear it as often. So I definitely recommend taking a language course over there because practicing it was also easy because I feel like anyone I met who was fluent was able to practice it with me. So I definitely enjoyed learning the language more over there. And I learned it easier, I think, than if I would have just practiced at home.
Great.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Immersion is such a huge part of language learning, and it's something that's so hard to find in the United States. Very rarely do you have professors who were native speakers. So being surrounded by that language helped so much for me. I had about 6 years of French under my belt before I went to France. So, I had conversational ability, but it was frustrating because you didn't have a full, handle on the language. There were things that you wanted to say, and you're frustrated because you're like, I can't express truly how I feel or truly how I want to say this, but you can kind of, talk your way around it. And so after being there, I have now found that I'm able to say what I want easier. It just, it kind of comes natural now versus before I left, it was more so I had to think kind of 5 steps ahead with language learning. So I agree. I think if you can do a program where you're immersed in the language, it will be such a great experience.
I would say for me, it was definitely a surprise before I went to Ghana, my knowledge of the languages in Ghana were limited to English being the national language. And when I arrived to learn that the most commonly spoken language, which was Twi, which is not a language that most universities or anyone offers to teach you, but there's also thousands of languages that are spoken throughout the country in Ghana. So um, there was a huge language barrier anytime I left Accra, which was the city. But like I said, Ghanaians are super friendly. So there was always a translator there. I don't know. They would just appear out of nowhere and help me solve my language issues. But definitely, there was the opportunity to take Twi at University of Ghana. Unfortunately, I didn't take it because I had a huge course load. But my friends who took it learned a lot, and they were able to communicate a lot easier with locals than I was.
Great. Well, and I can imagine in your dinners with your friends, you probably picked some up. Yeah.
Definitely.
So our next question is about like living situation and where you lived. So just to preface it, each ISEP program is different and it'll say on the program page, some programs students are living in dorms, some programs students are living with host families, and some programs you're living in a shared apartment with other students. Can you talk to us a little bit about your own living situation and what that was like? What type did you live in? All of that?
So my program, I lived in dorms, but the way they were set up was kind of like a mini apartment. We had a kitchen, a little space like for a dining table. I had a roommate. She had her own bathroom and space. I had my own bathroom and bedroom. So it was very nice. I was located pretty close to downtown, next to a bunch of grocery stores, a bunch of local cafes, restaurants. So it was a very enjoyable experience to have my own space, but with the host family, you get that immersion versus we were right in the heart of the city, so you could just walk out the door and have that experience. If you are worried about not getting as much of a, cultural experience, if you don't have a program that lives with the host family, you can definitely, kind of make it that based upon where you're living. So I really enjoyed my housing situation for that reason.
Awesome. Anyone else want to share?
Yeah. Um, my housing situation was a dorm, so I stayed in the International Student Hostel at University of Ghana, and there were two dorms dedicated to international students, and I had my own room. I requested a single, and I did have to pay an additional fee, but I shared the bathroom with the other students on the floor, and yeah, there was no AC because AC isn't common in Ghana. So I had a ceiling fan and I had a balcony, and I really enjoyed it that all of my friends and other international students were all in the same place. So we also had a courtyard where we would all meet and hang out most of the time. So it was a very lively dorm and experience.
Awesome. All right. Our next question is about packing. Does anyone want to talk about how you approached packing, how much you packed, what you considered when packing?
So I think I can speak for all the chronic overpackers out there. Studying abroad can be intimidating for that reason alone. My biggest thing was before I left for France, I started buying clothing that is, kind of a universal piece. So I think my biggest advice is to just buy a lot of basics that you can mix and match. It's nice for if you go on weekend trips, it's nice in general for when you're over there because you will buy things. I know I bought clothing and I packed kind of the bare minimum, besides the necessities. So I had space and also just kind of taking that sense of getting a lot of neutral clothing that you can mix and match.
Yeah, I kind of had the same situation. I definitely overpacked, but I was there for a whole semester and kind of in two different seasons. So it was really warm the first half of my study abroad time, but then really cold the second half. So I would say prepare to buy clothes like I didn't pack any big jackets or anything because I knew when I get there I could probably get a jacket, and I got a really cool one for my university. So if you know you're going to need things in the future, maybe wait till you get there to buy them, and make sure you leave empty room in your suitcase, because I definitely had to buy another suitcase to pack all the extra stuff I bought. So just be prepared to have room for stuff to come back.
My
Right.
advice would be to pack things that you cannot get in your host country. I went to a developing country where healthcare is different, where menstrual products were different, cleaning supplies were different, like necessities that I needed to survive were completely different. So the way that I packed was different. I packed a lot of medicines, I packed a lot of lotions and like essentials that I knew that I would not have access to when I got to Ghana. And literally, as Kelsey was saying, basics take you so far. I feel like I didn't even care about my outfits when I was abroad. Like, I just like, am I safe? Am I healthy? Am I having fun? That's it. So focus on what you really, really need.
Yes. I think also one thing that we hear from students sometimes, in addition to that, is focus on something that's gonna maybe really give you a lot of comfort. Like if you have a favorite comfort food that you know is not going to be available in that country and it's not perishable, maybe put some in your suitcase, right? Like if you're a person who maybe really loves peanut butter and you're going someplace where you know there's no peanut butter, just to give yourself a little bit of comfort, maybe put a jar of peanut butter in your suitcase, just so you've got a little emergency stash of something that's going to really give you comfort in a new place, in a new location, right? Okay, next question is really about ISEP exchange and the process, so I can answer this one. So the question is about for students applying on ISEP exchange, and how you create your list, and if you get your first choice or if you get multiple options, things like that. So to explain a little bit about ISEP exchange, when you're applying on ISEP exchange, you'll create a list of programs you're willing to study at. The list should be in your order of preference. So if you list it first on your list, that means it's your top choice. If you list it second on your list, it's your second choice. If you list it third, it's your third choice. What happens is we use an algorithm that aims to place the greatest number of students as high as possible on their list. And the placement you receive will depend on how many people are leaving that host site, right? So how much space is available at that site for inbound exchange students, and then also how many other people have applied for a space at that site. So we use that to calculate what we call our chance of placement, and you could check out the chance of placement website. I'll put it in the chat in a moment. You'll only receive one placement. So you don't get multiple sites that you can select from. If you apply an exchange, you'll receive one placement at a site on your list. So that's how it works. That's how it works. And we also have a question of, if you've already submitted your application, can you edit your preference list? If you really need to, I mean, at this point, we don't usually edit them, but if you have a big concern, you can email your ISEP Student Services Officer and they can help you make some changes. All right. And I'll turn it back to Jackie for the next question.
Thank you. Wonderful questions from the chat, everybody. I love that we have such an engaged group. I'd love to know from each of our participants, what is a challenge that you faced during your study abroad program and how did you overcome it?
So for me, it was kind of right towards the end of my program. I had a sinus infection and I did not obviously pack antibiotics with me. And France is very well known for the French pharmacies. So kind of using that resource, I went to the French pharmacy and I had a telehealth call and I did it all in French of this, medical vocabulary, and met with a French doctor on Zoom. And it was a very interesting experience, but it was something that, looking back on, I'm very proud of, because, it was a problem that I had to tackle because I had to get better. And I was able to, converse in a second language. And I was able to get my medication. And also, I think it's important to know that In France, medications are very inexpensive. So my doctor visit and my antibiotics and everything total was under $35, I want to say. And, every problem you will figure it out. And there are resources. My school, they actually had an in-house doctor, I believe, that you could call. And they had a bunch of things for students. So you're never alone. If you do run into anything medical wise, you will be able to have someone there who will help you.
Yes, Kelsey was one of our digital ambassadors for this past summer, and you made a really great video about your experience navigating that I particularly enjoyed. So that's also a plug for social media if anybody is wanting to get connected with us on Instagram or TikTok. But we'll let Catherine and Leah answer the question as well.
Yeah, my difficulty was actually before I even went to Korea. I'm actually a type 1 diabetic, so going somewhere where diabetes wasn't as popular or as common was definitely something very nerve-wracking to me. But I talked a lot with my healthcare provider and like what to do if any of these situations arrive, and just being prepared was really the number one thing that saved me. Just packing everything I needed and more, just having everything extra just in case anything were to happen, really helped me during the time I was there. And I was really worried about security and if I was going to able to get everything through, but it all went so smoothly, and everything I was worried about I shouldn't have been, it was okay. So it was nice to know that like things that are uncommon in one place it's still okay if you go somewhere different.
I would say outside of medical, because I did get malaria, and that was challenging because that is like an illness that isn't really common in the US, but it's very common in Ghana. So, as everyone else was saying, there's a lot of resources out there to get you better. There's ICEP officials, but also officials in the host country and at the university who are there. But I would say another challenging thing that I faced was the really patriarchal culture in Ghana, and like navigating that coming from the United States, women's rights, women are equal, we're liberated, and then going to Ghana and like being told like I couldn't do specific things that men could do, or I couldn't speak to men, or I couldn't speak to people in different positions in a specific way. So really like not taking it personally and understanding like this is a cultural nuance, a cultural difference that I have to accept as a visitor in someone's country, and just like understanding and navigating it that way. While it was challenging, I just had to accept the fact that I am the tourist and I am visiting their country. And if I want to respect their culture, this is what I have to do. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So we have a few other questions. This one is a new one. I haven't heard this before. This was interesting. How did you overcome any environmental differences between your hometown and the country where you are an exchange student? So for example, like if the temperature, if it was much hotter or much colder than where you're from, or like if there was kind of big changes in the environmental conditions compared to where you're from.
I think my number one advice, just like I said earlier, is to be prepared. I think the biggest difference was in Korea, the air quality is very different than it was here in the US. So being prepared, having like mask on hand, always checking if you have like a weather app or some kind of app that kind of tells you what those things are going to be. Just being prepared and looking up, doing your research is really what helps you the most, because just because I had my app and my app would show me like what the air quality is today, I knew if it was safe or if I needed to wear a mask or anything like that. So really just staying prepared and going through the resources you have.
I feel like maybe on a similar note, and Catherine, you may be able to speak to this, like researching local sustainability practices would also be good. Like, because I've seen from our digital ambassadors who studied in Seoul that sustainability practices there are quite different than from the United States, at least.
Yeah, I think having to sort the trash was something very new to me. Like we had all in the US, I'm kind of used to just like, here's a recycling bin, here's a trash can. But I loved their environmentalness to like sort the trash and putting things in specific areas just so everything would be done well was really nice to me. So just being updated on those things, whether you watch like a YouTube video about it or like a TikTok about it, it's really helpful to know those things before you go.
Love that.
Yeah, I didn't do my research before I went to Ghana, and when I got there, it was Hamatan, which is when the dust from like sub-Saharan Africa comes down into West Africa. And I saw everyone wearing masks and I was very scared. I didn't understand what was going on. So I think definitely listen to Catherine, do your research before you go, and speak to locals about how they adapt to the natural environment. It's very hot in Ghana and there's no AC for the most part. So I learned a lot of different tips and tricks from locals that the natives, I mean not the natives, the international students were struggling to understand or grasp.
Cool. And I know everybody mostly answered this and spoke about your experience making friends. It seems like both of you had a great time making friends, but anything else you want to add to that really quickly? Any last bit of advice on making friends?
I would definitely just say like it's not about having a ton of friends. Like I started the program having like a whole group of like 15 girls, but then I ended it with just being like us three. And even though I didn't have all those 15 girls at the beginning, I felt like the two I made were really lifelong friends. And like I'm gonna keep talking to them all the time and like try and get back together with them. So it's okay not to have like a huge group of friends. You can have those just two people and it's still gonna be okay and you're gonna have a good time.
I also have one more piece of advice. You don't always have to follow the group. I think you should definitely decide what kind of experience you want to have while you're studying abroad. And if that differs then from what the main group is doing, it's okay to like find a new group of friends or to find, I don't want to say go out on your own because that's dangerous, but yeah, it's definitely okay to not always follow the group and to find your way somewhere else.
I love
Just the
that advice.
last,
That's great.
sorry,
Those are
just the
great.
last thing going off
Yeah.
that is like, don't be afraid. Like, it is dangerous to do some things alone, but I know I was the only person who didn't have classes on Wednesday, so I would take that opportunity to go do things that maybe my friends didn't want to. So I would go to like a botanical garden or I went to a museum. So taking those opportunities, even if you are by yourself, to go explore things that you maybe were afraid to just because you're by yourself, like don't be afraid because you're going to miss out on those opportunities. So yeah.
Yes, these have been such wonderful answers, everybody. So we'll end with one last question, which is what is one piece of advice that you haven't shared already that you would like to tell the students who are attending this panel today?
This is kind of going off what I just mentioned, but don't like it's okay to spend some time, some nights you just want to like lay in bed if you had like a really eventful day or weekend. And it's okay to like spend a day just resting because if you are going to be there a while, it's okay to spend a day resting and you don't feel like you have to do something every day just because you're there. Like it's okay to take time and rest, but also don't rest for like a whole week and miss out on opportunities that you would have had, but it is okay to take a rest day every once in a while.
Yeah, I second that notion. And I would also say try your best to interact with locals because I feel like that's when you're going to learn the most about your host country. If I did not interact with locals, I feel like a large portion of my experience, like I wouldn't have had. So yeah, don't be afraid.
Well, thanks to both of you, and thank you to Kelsey too, who had to hop off to head to class. Your answers have been wonderful. It's been a joy to get to moderate this panel, and I will go ahead and pass it off to Cynthia for some closing slides.
Yes, thank you all so much. I really appreciated your advice and tips. For the students still listening on the webinar, I just wanted to remind you that if you have any questions about your ISEP application or programs, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can find the contact information for your designated ISEP Student Services Officer in your account if you click on your dashboard. You'll see our email address if you want to send us any quick messages or would like to schedule an advising appointment as well. And then just a plug for some upcoming events. We will be hosting an application workshop next Wednesday, September 6th So at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, like today's panel. So definitely join if you have any questions or want some tips before you submit your ISEP application. General reminder that our spring 2024 application deadline is September 15th. This is our priority deadline. So for ISEP Exchange, make sure that you have everything completed before this. Your home university might have an internal deadline, so check with them as well. The ISEP Direct deadlines can vary, but this is just our general priority deadline. And as Jackie mentioned earlier, feel free to follow us on TikTok and Instagram. We'll share a lot of reminders and really cool videos and stories from current students who are studying.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And a huge thank you to our panelists for sharing such wonderful advice, sharing your experience and your stories. We really appreciate your time and your generosity in being here today. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our students who joined us as attendees as well.